All right, so welcome back to part 4 of What's in the Box for Dominion Menagerie. All right, so let's get to the rest of the cards that are in this expansion, and I think there's 14 of them that we still haven't gone over yet that are action cards that are in supply. So there's a lot of the cards in this expansion. I've actually counted them up ahead of time. There are 30 cards in the supply. 30. So you could play 3 full games and play with 10 different ones each time before you would have played with every single card that goes in the supply. Of course, that does include the events and the ways. You'd still have to play a whole lot more before you'd get through all of them, especially the ways, since you're only allowed to play with them one at a time. At least that's what they recommend anyway. Maybe when you get the hang of this expansion, you've played it a couple of dozen times, maybe you could handle playing with 2 ways at a time. But it's recommended 1 way at a time. So let's get started. So our first one here is definitely one of my favorites. Black Cat. This is an action attack reaction. The first official attack reaction. If you guys watched my Snowline video of my own created expansion, I had an attack reaction in that. And this one is the first official attack reaction. So that's nice. And now there's actually an attack reaction. So that makes me feel even better. Alright, so let's see how this works. Well, you get 2 cards, and then if it isn't your turn, each other player gains a curse. For me, it's a wasteland. So, well, if it's not your turn, so you're probably like, well, wait a minute. If you're playing this during your action phase, it's your turn, so this obviously isn't going to happen. Each other player gains a curse, right? Well, this is where the reaction part goes into play. When another player gains a victory card, you may play this from your hand. So, they buy or gain a province, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to react with the Black Cat from my hand. Then you play it from your hand. You get 2 cards. So they got that province, right? You get to draw 2 cards, and then every other player would gain that minus point card because it isn't your turn. It's still the other player's turn because they bought that province, or gained it, for that matter. So that's really cool. That is really cool. Keep these handy. Keep these around, because a lot of your opponents are going to be buying victory cards. And so you could react a bunch of times. You know, of course, you have to play it from your hand, so you play it, you're only going to get, so that means if you're playing with 3 people, you're only going to get to react to that 1 time. But it's still awesome. That is still awesome. And of course, if you had more of these, you could, you'd be like, okay, I'm going to do Black Cat. Okay, I'm going to do Black Cat. Okay, I'm going to do, or you could hold on to them and see what your opponents do. So that's pretty cool. But I would probably just do them all at once. That's really cool. Okay, then we have Goatherd. +1 action, you may trash a card from your hand. +1 card per card the player to your right trashed on their last turn. So that's kind of interesting. You could trash a card from your hand. You may, if you want to, you'd get an action, so you'd still be able to play another card afterwards. And if somebody trashed a card on their last turn, then you'll have to make sure you keep track and be like, oh, my opponent, he trashed 2 cards on his last turn. Well, then you would get to draw 2 cards as well. So that's kind of interesting. It's kind of interactive, too. But only if they trashed cards, obviously. And if this is in the game, it's possible that they probably maybe trashed a card. Who knows? Probably. If they're trying to get rid of all their coppers, that's probably going to happen. You're probably going to get to draw a card. So maybe they played the Goatherd, and they trashed a copper, but they didn't get any cards because the player before them didn't trash anything. Then you play this, you'll get to do the same thing as them, and then you'd get the card, +1 card because they trashed a card in their last turn. That's pretty cool. And it says you may trash a card from your hand, so you don't have to. And you can still get the plus card. So that's pretty cool. Then we have Snowy Village. So here's our village. We have a village. Told you there was villages. Here's a village. Okay, so you get 1 card. You get 4 actions. Now, wow. That's awesome, right? 4 actions for a 3-costing card, and you get a card, and you get a buy. But here's the deal. When you play the Snowy Village, ignore any further plus actions you get this turn. Meaning, after you get the Snowy Village, you will only be able to play 4 action cards after, and that's it. No other action cards other than 4. So it caps you. So if you can, try to play this later down the road. If you're planning on, having a very powerful turn and you're planning on playing with more than 4 action cards, you should try to see if you can play the ones that give you actions before playing this one, because obviously this will cap you at 4 action cards afterwards. So that's something to note. But that's still a pretty interesting card, and most likely, in most turns, you won't be playing more than 4 after this anyways. Most of the time. At least maybe half of the time you won't be doing that. So that's still very, very useful village for sure. Okay. So then we have another 3-costing card. And we have another 4-costing card. And so that's the only 4-costing card we haven't done yet. Because the rest were in the horses and the exile videos. So here we have Sheepdog, another reaction card. Cool, right? And it's going to give you 2 cards when you play it. And then when you gain a card, you may play this from your hand. So whenever you gain a card, you could play this from your hand to get 2 cards. That's really cool. I like that a lot. That is awesome. That's definitely a very interesting reaction. All right, then we have the Village Green. Either now or at the start of your next turn, you get +1 card and you get +2 actions. Well, that's cool. You could use it now to get the card and 2 actions. Or maybe later it would be better to save it for later, your next turn. That'd be cool. Start with 2 actions, 2 extra actions at the start of your next turn. So you'd have 3 at the start of your next turn. That's really cool. And then when you discard this other than during cleanup, you may play it. So that's really cool. Somebody attacks you and you have to discard this because they, like it was a militia. You'd get to play it. You'd get, and then you could be like, well, my next turn, I'm going to save it for my next turn because this is still a duration card. So you could get that card and that 2 actions for your next turn after they attacked you. This is very similar to that card from Hinterlands called Tunnel. Whenever you, discarded a tunnel, whenever a tunnel got discarded, you could react with it. And as long as it wasn't during cleanup, obviously. And you could, gain a gold with it. But this one's letting you play it. So that's a little different. And what's another really cool thing about the Village Green? Is it's an attack duration reaction, right? There's only one other card, and that's in Adventures, called Caravan Guard, that was also an attack duration reaction. So here's our second card that looks exactly like it in coloration. So that's really, really cool. So we got a new one of these. That's really cool. All right, so now let's get into some of the 5-costing cards. All right. Well, here we have one of my favorite cards, the Mastermind. At the start of your next turn, you may play an action card from your hand 3 times. That is really powerful. Because most likely, you play this on your turn, you may not have an action card anyway. So this, of course, won't guarantee that you will on your next turn, but you could. And then you get to play it at the start of your next turn 3 times with the Mastermind in the duration effect. That's really cool. Another reason why I like this card so much is because of the cobra. I love cobras. So that's really cool. This Mastermind, he's got a pet cobra. Usually when you see a Mastermind, they have a parrot or they have a cat. They have some sort of animal with them on their shoulder or nearby in their hands. Like the Inspector Gadget series, he had a cat, right? And he was a mastermind, evil mastermind, right? Well, this guy, he's got a cobra. So that was an awesome choice. And that's another reason why I like this card so much, because of the cobra. All right. Then we have Barge. Now, I've played with this one online quite a few times. Either now or at the start of your next turn, +3 cards and +1 buy. So you could use it now and get the 3 cards and buy. But sometimes you may not have other actions. And so if you did it now, you could get the 3 cards, yes. But then if they were all action cards and you had no actions, well, that doesn't do you any good, right? But you could save this for the start of your next turn. So that's a whole lot more useful, for sure. I like that card. That's a pretty good one. Then we have Falconer. Here's another reaction card. This one, and it's really beautiful too. I just love that card. This is definitely another one of my favorites for more reasons than one. Okay, so gain a card to your hand costing less than this. So every time you play it, you can get a card costing 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever, right? That's pretty cool every time you play it. But the reaction part is kind of interesting too. When any player gains a card with 2 or more types, like let's say they gained an attack card. Well, that's an action and an attack, right? And that's 2 or more types, right? So you may play this from your hand. That's really cool. They gain an attack card. You have this in your hand. Now you'll gain a card to your hand costing less than this. That's really cool. I like that a lot. And that could happen with anything. That could happen durations, because that's 2 effects, right? These are both action durations. So if they gained one of those cards, that's awesome. Or if they gained the Falconer as well, because that's an action reaction, right? That's 2 or more types, right? Well, you would be able to react with Falconer and gain a card to your hand. That's really cool. But remember, you're playing it from your hand at that moment. So then you won't obviously get to play it on your next turn because you had already played it. That's still really cool. Alright, so we'll be back with you guys in the next video.